Hello and welcome back to episode 11 of the Sunny Views podcast, where today our topic is going to be a debate over veganism. So, I'm your host Sofia, and today I'm joined by...
Daniel Falces.
Harry from Year 13.
And I am Miss Claire Gilchrest, mathematics teacher at Sunnyview.
So, firstly, who's vegan and why are you vegan or why aren't you vegan?
That would be me, the only vegan in the room. Why am I vegan? Well, there's a long answer to that. I watched a documentary. It was actually, a video on YouTube called The Best Speech That You Will Ever Hear by Gary Yourofsky. And it kind of just opened up a whole world that I, despite having grown up on a farm, that I wasn't aware of many practices that happen in farming despite having grown up on one, and just many questions was raised in the video, like why do we drink the milk of another species? We are the only species that does that. Why do we subject animals to the horrors that they have to go through in order to be on our plate when we don't need to? It's, I guess, as many things that we're going to talk about today, about whether or not we need it for our health. If we don't need it, if it's not a requirement, then why would we subject them to the horrors that they are put under? I watched this documentary, and it just started a whole path of learning, essentially, and that was back in 2017, the end of 2017, and I started watching more and more, just learning about it. I felt I had a duty. It was like the tip of an iceberg, so I started to have an idea about it without having seen any of the horror videos of what actually happens to animals in slaughterhouses and on farms and all of these kind of things. So I started little by little, bit by bit, and I was vegetarian immediately after watching this documentary. And then, let's say about 2 months later, once I started learning more, I was completely vegan. And that was it.
Interesting.
What is the problem of animals, like suffering and all that?
What's the problem with animals suffering?
Like why do they suffer?
Why do they suffer? Because they're sentient beings like you and I. We are animals, they are animals.
They are in bad conditions, or what is the main issue?
It's not, well, do you mean about whether I care or not? Because there's two different things. They can either be farmed under horrific conditions where they're beaten and treated really badly. But ultimately, those animals all go to the same slaughterhouse as those that we're told are organic, grass-fed and have this amazing life. And actually that's probably even crueler, to take the lives of those animals because they've had a relatively nice, peaceful life, and then all of a sudden their lives are taken from them. It's more so the morals and whether or not... I mean, whenever I have this conversation with somebody, I'm talking to the people who are open to looking at what happens to animals, what actually happens, because almost nobody wants to learn about it. When I went vegan, and I remember my brother at the time, he said to me, I can't watch those videos. And he said, because if I do, I have to make a change. And that's essentially the crux of the whole idea of veganism. Why would you become vegan? Because vegan is it's not just a diet. So I know you're going to be talking to me a lot about diet, and that. But there's all these other facets. So you could talk about the environmental reasons as well. But for me now, my own sole reason for being vegan is the philosophy of veganism is that I want to cause as little as is practically possible levels of harm to other beings, because they are sentient beings. So it's their level of sentience. They have the capacity to suffer and feel pain, just like you and I. So I don't want to cause pain unnecessarily when I don't need to.
But for example, with that point of trying to cause less suffering possible, for example, making like planting and making crops grow and all of that things, you have to kill a lot of insects, and those insects that die will also then kill birds that eat those insects, and a successive chain.
And I have another point about caring
So
about
I'll make
sentient
note
beings.
of that point. Next
Oh wait,
point.
no. You
Yeah.
talk about
So
that point first.
like at the end, maybe I don't know this, but you're eating more plants. You're also killing a lot of other animals.
But actually, you're killing more animals than I am, because the vast majority of the crops on the planet are fed to animals. We kill over 80 billion animals, land animals. This is not including fish. If we include fish, it's trillions. So this is almost 90 billion animals that we need to feed. There's 800 million starving people on the planet because of the crops that we grow. We clear so much land to grow to feed the animals that we need to kill. I mean, like mainly, I think, like, okay, so my subject that I teach is mathematics. So when I came across this whole idea, I was like my logical brain was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're just all we need to do is take out the middleman. We're getting all of our nutrients and all of our vitamins, protein, all of these kind of things. They come directly from the plants. So if we just use animals to filter this because we like the taste. That's the main reason why people continue to contribute to animal suffering, is because they like the taste. So with regard to the crops, sorry, yes, crop deaths happen, but they happen for all of the crops that are cultivated. So the crops that are cultivated for animals to feed on, they also cause those crop deaths. And if you want to be an insect advocator and supporter, then you should be vegan.
Okay, I have a point about what about all the economic and job opportunities that the meat industry and the non-vegan industry provides? Like that's a large part of like the world's economy and how it gives people jobs in like, I don't know, supermarkets.
My family members.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like your farmers, the job, like the fast food industry and all of that they require meat to live pretty much and sustain a good living. So it doesn't, like, your impact in that way, not eating meat, affect humans and not animals.
It just means over time that people would transition to a different line of work. So if
But
we
does
talk,
that exist though?
what do you mean? It would exist if the demand shifts. So this is the whole point of, and why veganism is growing, is because people are learning about the thing that most people don't want to know is what actually happens to animals. And there's a lot of people who don't want to look at what happens to them. I can't. I've looked at some of it, but purely because I support so many vegan or animal rights activists online. So the more and more people start to demand vegan products, plant-based, because veganism and plant-based is two different things. If you are demanding more plant-based products, then people are going to go towards that direction with regards to work. If we look at slaughterhouse workers, if we talk about the psychology and the statistics, what do you think the statistics looks like for somebody who slaughters 600 animals in a day? How do you think their let's say their levels of PTSD and where in society are they? Are they the marginalised ones? Are they the ones that who are, let's say, immigrants coming into a country who try their best to get into a job, but they're going to end up doing jobs that nobody wants to do? Who wants to kill 600 animals in a day? So not only or 800 or whatever it is, not only are we contributing to the death of these animals, it takes into account of you have to think of the psychology of these people, what it's like. So I had done some activism out on the street, and like when I first became vegan, and I was so wanted to tell everyone about this because I was just so shocked. And the people who I was talking on the street, I spoke to some butchers, and I spoke to some people who had worked in slaughterhouses. And there's a lot of people who've transitioned, and there's a lot of people who their mental health state after doing that is obviously not very good. And statistics shows that many of those people who do work in slaughterhouses, they have higher levels of, obviously, how could you not become a violent person if you murder so many animals in a day? So actually it's a good thing if you're taking them out of those jobs and you're providing them with jobs that are less violent. You know, like harvesting corn is a bit different to harvesting animals. Like, this is a terminology. People use the words harvesting animals to make us feel not so bad about actually just killing them, which is what we do.
What about if it's painless and, well, they try to eat? And also, the thing that you say about like people getting PTSD, and if they automatize it, so they don't have a direct contact with that animal when they kill it, like for example with machines or something like that.
Do they have direct contact with the animal? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and also, if they don't, why they don't do it? Like,
why
pressing a button and that's all, and you don't see.
So vast majority of, let's talk about pigs, for example. Vast majority of pigs internationally are gassed. They're put into CO2. They're put into it's like a wheel. They go into this container, let's say, that's a part of, my only thing that I can think of is like the London Eye. It's like that. They go into a pod and they cram in as many as they possibly can, and they lower them down into CO2, where they scream and thrash around for their lives. And this is the most humane way of slaughtering. This is to stun the animal. So that's what happens before they are then they have their head cut off, essentially. Their neck is slit after that. So this is to render them unconscious, and that's the first thing that happens. So yes, of course, they have interaction and contact with animals when they're alive, and when they are alive, they are trying as best they can to get out of that situation, because they're intelligent animals and they know what's about to happen. So yes, they do have contact. And then for cows, they have to shoot them with a bolt gun in the head first before they cut their head off. So yes, they do have physical contact with these animals.
But the thing that you say about pigs, how are they going to scream? Like, because CO2 mainly, for example, a lot of CO2 intoxications are basically that you are in like
put
your
to
house.
Sleep.
Yes, exactly. You are like get sleepy.
Yeah.
And why are you going to scream?
It's not the same levels of CO2, or not that it's the same levels, but it's the type of CO2 that they use. I mean, if we talk about gassing, what's the first thing that we think about?
The Holocaust.
Yes, the Holocaust.
But then they should.
It's the same. So to finish that,
yes.
it's that kind of gas. So there's many investigations where people have put cameras into these the places where they do the gassing, the CO2, and it shows them screaming, thrashing. They're thrashing around so much that some of them knock their hooves off their feet because they're trying to get out of there so desperately. So it's not the same. I know what you're thinking about, the gas where to put you gently to sleep. It's not that. So we want to think it's that.
So maybe we should make policies, the government, to change, for example, to carbon monoxide, which is a more
pleasant.
Pleasant.
So this level of gas and the gas that they have chosen, and the reason why it is seen as being more humane, it's actually because it's quicker, it's more efficient, and they have demands. Obviously, these slaughterhouses, this mega slaughterhouse that they have in the north of Spain in Benifar, they opened it, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. So, and I've forgotten the numbers. I wish I could remember. I should be good at numbers, right? But they kill massive number of animals every single day. So they have these demands that they need to meet. So it's sometimes, a lot of the time, what we want to believe is true is hidden from us. So they want you to think that it's the most humane. It is actually seen as more humane than the previous way, which was stunning, and they put them into water and have this electric shock to stun them, which doesn't always work. So now they use this CO2 gas. So it's not really, there's, even in the UK, this is RSPCA. This is and what are they stand for, the protection of animals. They stamp their products by on the animals who've been slaughtered through carbon dioxide, through gassing, which and the evidence shows from the investigations that have been carried out that they suffer tremendous pain. So your question is, is there is there a nicer way of taking an animal's life?
Yes.
So I think we should all think about that. Is there a nicer way to end the life of a sentient being that does not want to die, that was literally purely brought onto the planet for our gain, let's say, and their days were numbered, and they don't see the light of day. The only time when they see the outside is when they go out on that chute, out from the factory towards like a what do they call it?
Conveyor belt?
No, they walk out on they see the light of day then, and they're going straight to a lorry to a slaughterhouse. So you're going to ask me, the vegan, is there a better way of killing animals? Yes, there is a better way of doing what we're doing, and that is to just leave them alone.
But then they will die by a predator in nature and even have more violent death, no? Running for their life, and then a jaguar or a wolf chopping his head off.
Oh, you mean if they were out in the wild?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, like,
what do we do with all the animals then? Do you just keep them as pets? Or
well, are we all going to
wild?
turn? So after everyone's watched this video, everyone's going to turn vegan. Like, it's going to be a slow process. Veganism is gradually growing, so the demand is lowering. So we're never going to be like overrun by animals. And by the way, the only reason why these animals are here is through artificial insemination. It is not a natural thing, and we are breeding them, selectively breeding them. We are, like, for example, with cows, with dairy, you can manipulate them in a way that they start to produce more and more milk. So the animals that we have currently, how they are, it is not natural. They would not be like this. A chicken would not lay 300 eggs in a year. This is what they do now because we demand it. When we take away the egg, they want to produce another one. The eggs are the periods of a chicken. So they only should have about 12 to 15 in a year. Now they have 300 through all this intensive farming. So there is nothing natural about what we're doing to these animals.
What's the problem with not being natural? Because, for example, a plane is not natural. So we have to go walking to Alaska or USA, for example. Like, there's humans made a lot of things that are not natural.
Manipulated lots of things to
we
be
manipulate nature to favor our...
for our gain.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So then what's the problem with it's not natural? Like,
because the ethics involved. So this is the part of veganism,
yes,
which is it comes in all of these things. You can be plant-based because of the environment. You can be plant-based because of your health. Veganism is that you're showing kindness and compassion towards the animals, and it's your moral framework that you have. So on an ethical point, that's a horrendous way to view animals, that we should manipulate and get as much out of them as we possibly can, because it's cruel. I think.
Planes aren't alive, so it's like not a good comparison, I feel like.
I have a question. Like, I have a point. So since we've genetically manipulated these animals to produce more eggs or to produce more milk, can we not, in a way, manipulate them to not feel or be sentient, like you say? Like, not feel and like to be slaughtered, and you say like they suffer and everything, but can you manipulate those pigs in the London Eye to not scream or hold back when you try and kill them?
I guess we can't, because they're born sentient beings, and what?
And will you
that would be a person. Then you actually care. So then, if you care how they experience their lives, why do you want to kill them?
And then you will eat
Taste.
a good beef?
That's actually the only reason, really. Why
Will you eat
people
then
do
a beef if they didn't suffer?
a cow?
Yes, a cow beef.
Would I eat a cow
Yes.
at this point? No, it completely grosses me out.
Yeah.
I have like if there's roadkill or something, and you really want to start eating an animal off the side of the road, I have no real. Okay, I think it's a bit weird, but I've less of an issue with that rather than the animals that literally every time you go into a supermarket and you pay for these products, you are sending down the line for that piece of the animal has been removed, another animal goes into the slaughterhouse for you. So it's
But if they don't suffer, as Harry said, They get.
It's not possible for them to not suffer.
But for example, there is there are some people that have a genetic problem that they don't have like pain sensors, no. So if we are able to make that happen in animals, and we have a breed where
when that happens, come back and ask me. That's my roundabout way of saying I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yes, but if
pigs can fly.
If it,
basically.
But if it happens, do you think then you will be like stop being vegan and start eating meat?
As I say, come back to me when it happens, Danny. I don't think that's ever going to. How is it possible for a sentient being to no longer have the capacity to suffer?
Well, not suffering, have the capacity of not feeling pain. But if you don't feel pain, and also talking about suffering, that's I think a little bit difficult to measure, because, for example, you have been living a great life. I mean, you are a millionaire and you have been doing everything you want, and then you go back to poverty, and then you suffer in a way, no? Because you had all of these things, and now you don't have anything. But if you never had anything, how are you going to suffer? Because that's your normal level and all you have lived.
But that's not the same as if you've a couple of million and then you lose it. It's not exactly the same as being beaten and having a knife put across your throat.
But they don't know. The knife comes and they die then.
Like they don't know their rights. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, they didn't know anything better. So that's normal for them, because you are saying
even more
it doesn't mean it's good.
Even more cruel.
But it's not good for you, like from your point of view, like that's a bad life. But if you don't know anything else, like it's what life is.
The thing is, as I say, the definition of veganism is to show as much kindness and compassion. It is essentially that. It's just to show kindness and compassion. I'm going to have this. I will only ever talk about this, and I did when I first became vegan. I wanted to tell everyone about this because I regretted not knowing. That was the worst part about it, was that I didn't find this out sooner. And I was really annoyed. I was like, how did I not stumble across this information sooner? So whenever I'm talking about this, I'm talking for the one or two or maybe more people who look at this situation with an open heart and an open mind. Because when you think about it, if there was a pig here in the room and I handed you a knife, would you be able to kill that pig?
If I'm hungry, yes.
But really, would you do that? And what do you think everyone else in the room would think about if you just started to stab a pig to death in this room? But that's essentially what happens, and there's really good ads out now about like this couple going to a restaurant, and the guy isn't aware that you have to go and kill your animal for yourself, and he's given a knife and he's in a room by himself with this tiny little piglet, and of course like it's the most insane thing in the world.
Well, I would prefer to go and hunt it myself than, as you said, that suffering all of his entire life, no?
Okay, but you don't. You go to a supermarket
yes.
and you buy it pre-packaged in a package for you. So you're paying all these people down the line, the people in the slaughterhouse, the farmers first of all. And the thing is, farming, what people actually think it is and what it is a whole other story. And it's not an easy job. And the thing is, we actually, by us having this demand on them, they have to constantly provide for the demand, and so it's not an easy job, and with subsidies and all of this, so it's not really seen as, like, I've grown up as the daughter of a farmer. I don't really want to have so much of this conversation on a podcast, but my dad was not really present around a lot of the time. My mother was there all of the time, because my dad, when you're a farmer, and the same, especially if you're a dairy farmer, your life is that. They don't have holidays. They have to be there all the time, especially, like, for example, now is calving season in the dairy farm. That point is it's not the most enjoyable kind of job to have. I guess it's the thing that they know, and that's all that they know. But I'm kind of getting lost where I'm going with this. But what I'm saying is that the amount of farming time that they have to spend, it's just not a pleasant job to have. It's not like your Monday to Friday 9 to 5. It's just not a job like that. So you have to consider every time you go into a supermarket, when you're paying this money, there's all of this whole story behind that, which is a very long story and a lot of suffering.
But it's not the same when you plant crops?
We've had this. Let's go back to the beginning of the podcast.
Like the people that work on making plants grow.
Yeah, yes. But it's a whole other different type of farming. You're farming a plant. Yes, you have to obviously nurture it and make sure that you don't have a lot of losses, but it's not the same as if you lose a cow overnight because they've crossed the fence and cut their leg, and then they're like, or the veterinary bills, let's say. It's not the same as a sentient being that you're in charge of, and it's not just one. These farmers have like hundreds, and then in factory farms, we're not even talking about factory farms. That's thousands, hundreds of thousands of animals. But
sentient beings are beings that feel
suffering, have the capacity to suffer and feel pain. Yes.
Yes.
It's they have an experience of life. It's not like a level of intelligence. So sentience is different to intelligence.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a point to bring up.
Bring
so
it.
Although you're saying it's like expanding over time, isn't there a limit on the amount of vegans that there can be? Because lots of meat eating and like the culture around having animal-based products is based on culture, tradition, and religion.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you've got like Argentina, which is known for like their beef and their grilling and all of that, and then you've got all these like traditions and religions where, for example, like Christmas dinner, like you always have lots of meat and animal-based products out on the table. Don't you think that this has an effect on the amount of vegans that there can possibly be in the world?
Should culture dictate our morals?
In a way it does, though.
You're correct, it does, but should it? The thing is, there's many things down through the years that were cultural that we now look upon with horror, thinking, why on earth did we ever do that? So there's many things that we do, and I guess bullfighting is a contentious one that still happens in this country, and there's a lot of debate about that, and I always wonder why so many people are against that, but they'll go home and have a steak on their plate. Do you know what I mean? So that is a cultural thing, and I don't know what your stance on that is, but a lot of people will see that, okay, it was seen as cultural. It's kind of like gladiators from how many years ago, how old is that? And we still have bullfighting happening, and I didn't even know what that was until I saw it on the TV when I came here, that I had no idea that knives were being, or swords, whatever, were being put into the animal. But yeah, my whole question is, I don't think that culture should dictate how you go about your life. And this is a question that we should all ask ourselves as an individual. You don't need to ask and see what the whole crowd is doing. You make your decision yourself with an open heart and an open mind. Yes, you're saying about Argentina, but they just eat a lot of beef. We do in Ireland as well, because that's what we've always done. Yeah. But you can see it as, yeah, we've always done that. We've always had slavery. Okay, so let's just keep doing it. It's great. Do you know what I mean? There are parts of the world, like extreme parts of the world, where they can't. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody who's up in the northern hemisphere to really high up to tell them, oh yeah, you have to have a vegan burger. You know what I mean? They're surviving on the extremities. There's not a huge amount of those people anymore, but yes, okay, that is their only way of them surviving, and they're hunting for themselves. But us here, with supermarkets all around us, we have all these choices, and the thing is whether or not we actually need. So that's the question. Do we need animals to survive? Do we need animal products in our diet to survive?
Well, being maybe like people that are more, as you say, that are more privileged, they don't. But for example, middle or lower classes, they probably need, because for example a child growing needs protein, creatine, and a lot of things that mainly come from animals, because if they try to get for example nuts, they are quite expensive to have enough protein from nuts than from meat.
So where does protein come from?
Well, it's
where does a cow get their protein? And they're filled with protein. So where do they get their protein from?
the grass.
From the plants.
But the thing is
Madness.
But the thing is
but in cows it's more concentrated, so you don't need to get as much of the product to get the like requirements you need for like.
What about a gorilla?
Gorilla?
Yeah.
One second. But for example, cows are all day eating plants, so we have to be all day eating plants, because a cow maybe is going to eat 8 hours a day or even more. So we are going to be all day eating salad.
So that's what I do then. Why would you choose to eat salad all day?
No, they eat leaves, cows. So you have to do a lot of things, and there are people that they have to work, they have no time to be all the time eating.
Cows are much bigger than humans,
yes.
so they probably have to eat a lot more.
But so to answer your question, first of all, about privilege, the cheapest things in the supermarket are vegan: rice, beans, potatoes, all those legumes, garbanzos, lentils. They are the cheapest thing in the supermarket. If it's possible, obviously, because I'm sitting right here, I'm a vegan and I have been for.
But you didn't grow being a vegan, because I understand that when you are over, like you stop growing and all those things, like you're over 18 maybe or something like that, you can try to base your diet in a more plant-based. But for example, a child that is growing needs a lot of calcium. Well, calcium comes from salad mainly, but like plants. But well, I mean like protein and all these nutrients that are, or for example, B12. It's another important vitamin that comes from eating meat and eggs and all this animal-based food.
So can I come back on all of that? So first of all, the American Association of Dietetics, which comprises over 100,000 dietitians, have their stance on veganism or plant-based diet is that it is appropriate for all stages of life, including birth, so long as it's well prepared. The thing is, I know now what I need to eat and what I do eat, and that's just it. It's just my normal. I never think about it anymore. B12, where does B12 come from? It doesn't come from the animals. It comes from the soil. However, the soil is so depleted from over-farming, because we are farming on a scale that is not feasibly possible for us to continue with. Because of the over-farming, the soil is so depleted that the animals, which it's nice that you think they graze on the grass for 8 hours in a day, they need supplementation. So and I grew up in Ireland, so how do you think the soil would be in Ireland by comparison to Spain? You would think it would be more nutritious, full of more vitamins, more minerals and all of that. They cannot get the nutrition that they need solely from the soil. So they get it in supplementations, which either can be injected or they come from feed, which is like pellets of soy. And where do you think that comes from? That comes from the
plants.
It comes from South America. So deforestation, the vast majority of deforestation is happening because we need to clear land, not only for grazing cattle, which is what most people think, but we need it to clear land to grow the crops that we need to feed to these animals. So over 75% of the production of soy on the planet is for animals. Just 6 tiny percent is for human consumption. So my idea, if we want to go down a whole, the vitamin B12 or whatever that you're saying, you can either take the supplement from yourself, you can take it yourself, or you can take it from an animal. So there's a more ethical choice that you can make there. And if we want to talk about deforestation and the environmental reasons, all of this deforestation that's being caused and all of the crops that we're feeding to all of these animals, we could just take out the middleman. We can, and the middleman being all these suffering animals, almost 90 billion
Well, and also
every
workers,
year.
no? Also workers.
What about them? But I mean, you mean that the workers, they'd have their work taken from them, but we still have to feed all of the same population. So the shift would change from animal farming to plant farming, and we would need far less land. The amount of land that we use for animals is insane. So the land would then be used for cultivating crops that we can eat ourselves directly. So the thing is, it's possible. Like all of these things, the health debate, the like your diet, the environment, there's no question. It is better for you to for the planet to not. It's not a necessity. We do not need animal products in our diet to survive. So the question comes down to, which is the main thing that I will always talk about, which no one wants to talk about, is the moral aspect. Not that I don't have this conversation with everyone all of the time. Obviously, I know my audience, but now you've given me a mic, so I'm going to talk about it.
But what about like you say to survive? Like of course you can survive on
Survive
plants.
and thrive. Sorry, I should have said.
But don't you think? Oh, obviously you don't think, but obviously
Yes.
maybe me and Daniel think that for an optimal diet or optimal like functioning as like a person or like as an athlete, it would be important to include animal-based products in your diet. For example, like beef and eggs, they have a high concentration of cholesterol.
And creatine also.
Cholesterol. Is this supposed to be a positive or a negative?
It's
Positive.
Cholesterol is also
Cholesterol is
made-
good for you.
Yes.
Oh God.
For example, cholesterol. No, it was cholesterol that makes testosterone.
Yeah.
And
Oh, testosterone levels.
Yes.
Is this where we're going?
yes, that for athletes it's very
Exactly.
important because, for example, you have someone with I have a friend that has high levels, has a problem, has high levels of testosterone, and he goes to the gym like once a month, and he's jacked, and that is a huge advantage if you are competing, for example, in football, volleyball, or whatever sport you are doing.
So then I wonder, what are all these vegan bodybuilders and athletes doing? So if they can do it, if it's possible for them, and there is a very large growing number of them who are doing just fine and thriving,
Yeah.
then how is it possible? Like, there's always going to be this debate, because diets is just, and I don't like going towards this area, because there are so many different diets around the world. There's this diet and you can be prime and amazing on this one, but you could also be the same on another one. Veganism is not about a diet. I know you really want to have this discussion with me, but I've done like plant-based courses that was done by plant-based like surgeons and doctors and stuff like that. I already know it, so I know it's okay. You can survive, you can thrive, great. And I don't really care about that anymore. I was really into health and fitness, and actually that's how I stumbled across that video initially. But I know that I can get the same out of, and even if it's not exactly the same, even if it's tiny little bit less thriving, there's still a victim involved. There's still a sentient being who wants to live. Is the decision between me having one type of diet and another one. So it comes back to morals, and you have to ask yourself, do you really want to do that? And
I think we're running out of time now. So thank you so much for this conversation, because it was very interesting. And I didn't even have to say anything. You guys were just talking. So thank you so much. Do you have any final words you want to say?
I do, actually. I could stay here. Do you want to stay for the next lesson? I think there is, if we lots of people don't want to ask this question of themselves. A lot of people don't want to look into your morals and how you are in your life, because it may mean that you need to change something. But that change that you think is a big change for you can ultimately be the difference of an animal having a life or not having a life. I think if we we look at what's on our plate and our world, how it is, there's so much suffering, there's so much violence, and there's so many horrible things that go on in our world, and yet we never turn a reflection towards ourselves and ask about, well, how is our planet how it is? When you were talking about Christmas time, that's supposed to be a time of peace and kindness and loving and all those things, but there's violence and death on your plate. So that's I don't know. I think that's yeah. So I think if we just consider what's on our plate, then we might live in a more peaceful world.
But then it's considering.
Okay. Before we start again, because we actually really are running out of time. So thank you so much for being my guest, and thank you so much for our listeners for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I definitely did, and it was very, very thought-provoking. Definitely made me feel at least very guilty about eating meat.
I didn't mean that.
Maybe no, but maybe could be vegan in the future. Maybe. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you next week.
Thank you.